Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Ruin Snow, and today we'll be doing Magic the Gathering Top 10 Beacon. Believe it or not, there's a lot of Beacon cards in Magic. So now, at number 10. With the first being on our list is Beacon Hot from Dissension. It's a common going for a whopping 9 cents on the market at the time of this video. Well, it's 2 for a 1/1 flyer, so it's pretty standard, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may untap target creature, and then you can pay for 1 white. Beacon Hawk gets +1 defense until end of turn, and you can pump it up quite a bit. So it's very helpful, very cool. But it's only at number 10. So now at number 9. What we have is actually Ignite the Beacon. And if you actually look at the picture, it's kind of like a real beacon. It's from War of the Spark, rare, going for 19 cents on the market. The reason why it's at number 9 is, well, it says search your library up to 2 Planeswalker cards, reel them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. I don't understand how this is rare, because it's very unlikely that you really want 2 Planeswalker cards, but you never know. So let's move on to number 8. Which we have is Interplanar Beacon from War of the Spark. It's an uncommon going for a whopping 9 cents on the market. It's a very interesting card because it's whenever you cast a Planeswalker spell, you gain 1 life, which is, maybe 3 at most is the reason why it's here. And then, 2 mana of different colors. Spend this mana to cast a Planeswalker spell, so you have to pay 1 to do that on top of that. It can be very helpful and it can be very useless. This is why I'm like, it's in between, and that's why it's high on the list. So now, let's move on to number 7, where we got Beacon of Destiny. It's from Legions as a rare going. Yeah, that's right, 25 cents on the market. It's really getting up on these prices. So Beacon of Destiny is kind of an interesting card. It costs 2 mana for this 1/3, but to tap it, the next time a source of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, that damage is dealt to Beacon of Destiny instead. So you can really have fun with this, but it's also quite useless because it's done to you, not even creatures you control, it's only you. So the chances are very slim. So you really want to, other than pump this guy up, he's going to be useful and not useful at the same time, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So let's just move on to number 6, where we have Beacon Bolt. It's from Guilds of Ravnica. It's an uncommon for another 9 cents on the market. I'm surprised this is actually 9 cents because this can be very powerful. Maybe, I guess, not for Vintage Battle or anything, but it costs 3 mana. It deals damage to target creature equal to the total number of instant sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. That can be very easily done if you're just building an instant sorcery deck. This card is broken and it has Jumpstart. But hey, what do I know, right? So let's move on to number 5. So halfway down the list, we got Beacon of Destruction. Various sets being rare and an average price of 24 cents. I'm actually surprised it's that low, but we are starting to get into like interesting beacon cards. This one says it deals 5 damage to a target creature or player, costing 5 mana. And Planeswalkers didn't really exist when this first card came out, so that's why it wouldn't be in there. You can shuffle it back to your own library. That's why it costs 5 mana for that ability alone, which is not that great, but does make this card very possible, especially if you're running out of cards. You can keep pumping this over and over again. So let's move on to number 4. And as mentioned before, there are interesting cards. This is Beacon of Immortality. It's from various sets. We're going for $3.14 on the market. Costs 6 mana, so it's pretty steep, but it is an instant, which is very interesting. It says double target player's life total, then shuffle it into your library. So I think that's really cool because there's a lot more cards that say, you have 50 life, you win the game, or anything like this. This kind of card would be very beneficial to you, especially even if you're being attacked by an enemy. Double your, it's just kind of cool. So let's move on to number 3, where we got Beacon of Tomorrows. That's right, not Beacon of Tomorrow, but Tomorrows. It's from 5th Dawn or Dual Decks, Mind versus Might. It's a rare one for $4.09. Again, like all the other ones, it's basically shuffled back into your library. But this one costs 8 mana. Wow. But target player takes an extra turn after this one. Can you imagine having the 4 of those in a row and then reshuffling back your library? This card is very powerful if you just really know how to use it. So let's move on to number 2. Well, we got Beacon of Unrest. It's from various sets, being rare, with an average price of 55 cents on the market. For 5 mana, it says put target artifact or creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Then shuffle it. So I don't care about that. You can sure shuffle back in your library. But any creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield, this card would be absolutely amazing. Commander series, be really cool deck. It's very powerful already. But let's move on to number 1. With the last being on our list, we have Beacon of Creation from 5th Dawn. It's a rare going for $17.70 on the market. Costs 4 mana. It's really cool because it says put a 1/1 green insect creature token into play for each force you control. Then shuffle it into your library. Can you imagine having no cards but this card and over and over and over again? So you can really have fun with this card. You can really get those creatures out. And then like maybe just have this in Meat Hook Massacre. And oh man, this card would be so deadly. There's a reason. It being at $17.70 as well, there's so much you can do with this and easily win. So I hope you guys have a good day and a good evening. Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is RuneSnow, and today we're going to be going over Magic the Gathering top 10 core. There are actually quite a few, and mostly are in Commander. So let's begin with number 10. Which we have is Court Hussar from various sets. It's an uncommon going for roughly 10 cents on the market. This one has a lot of drawbacks. That's why this one is at number 10. Because it costs 3 mana to put into play. It's a 1/3 vigilance. It says when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library and then put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any card order. Well, you can do that with spells, which are actually a lot cheaper than this. Then it says when it enters the battle, you sacrifice it unless you planes was spent to cast it. So this forces you to play a blue, white, or more deck. And maybe you don't want to. I don't understand how this was an uncommon. This is not that good. 1/3 on top of that. You would have to somehow pump that creature, which is typically green. So this is why it's at number 10. It's not even a good card in general, but it is a court card. So let's move on to number 9. At number 9, we got Court Homunculus. From various sets, it's common going for 7 cents on the market. Basically, it costs white, so 1 for a 1/1. So on top of that, it gets +1/+1 as long as you control another artifact. With so many artifacts, I guess back then at this time, can cost 0 and put it into play. You can actually have this as a 2/2 right away. Other than that, there's nothing really too great about this card. Not a cool picture, not a good card, not even from a good series. So let's just move on to number 8. And at number 8, we have Court Provocateur from Magic 2013. It's an uncommon going for 10 cents on the market. This is actually kind of cool. I really like it. It costs 3 mana to put this 1/1 into play. It's a really cool picture as well. Basically, you can tap it. Target creature attacks this turn if able. Target creature blocks this turn if able. This gives complete control on those creatures when it is in play. For 3 mana, it is a little expensive, but for its abilities, I think it's actually not too bad. But it's at number 8, so because you can tell that there's better cards. But this one, it would be actually pretty decent in a real deck. So let's move on to number 7. And at number 7, we got Court Cleric from Corset 2019. It's an uncommon going for 17 cents on the market. Again, like most things, this one costs 1 for a 1/1, so very impressive. But it has lifelink, so that's really cool. And it gets +1/+1 as long as you control the Ajani Planeswalker. So the chances of that Planeswalker being out while this is 1 for a 1/1, that's not even to the factor. This is why it's at number 7. Basically, it's a lifelink 1/1, which is actually a pretty cool card in general in the world of Magic. And in Clerics, it's not too bad. So it's at number 7. So let's move on to number 6. Which we have is Disorder in the Court from Crytsal Commander quotations, because it could be from anything else. It's a rare going for 48 cents. Basically, it says exile X target creatures, then investigate X times. Return the exile cards to the battlefield tapped under their control at the beginning of the next end step. So basically, it's an instant, which it would have to be if you want to exile those creatures. So if the opponent has kind of like destroy all creatures or whatever, you have this to protect them. And then on top of that, if you'd rather just have to investigate, well, that could be very good at 2. That's why it's at number 6. So let's just move on to halfway down the list at number 5. Which we have beginning with the Commander Legend cards. This one is Court of Ear. And I put in quotations S because it's from 2 sets from Commander Legends, which you'll see throughout this video. This is a rare going for 89 cents on the market, probably because it costs 5 mana to put this into play. Basically, when it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch, so you definitely have to play that type of game. It says that at the beginning of upkeep, Court of Air does 2 damage to any target. If you're the Monarch, it deals 7 damage to that player or permanent instead. The saying is pretty cool. It says, hold your tongue, lest you burn it. If you look at the picture, that just makes perfect sense. So now, let's just move on to number 4. And at number 4, we got Court of Bounty. And again, in quotations, it's Commander Legends with a rare going for $2.75 at the current time of this video for the market. And again, with these type of cards, it does deal with the Monarch thing. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you're the Monarch, instead you may put a creature or a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. For 4 mana, I say that's pretty powerful because who knows if you're going to get that 10/10 into play based on the green being used. And this is why it is at this number. So let's move on to number 3. And at number 3, we got Court of Ambition from Commander Legends. It's a rare going for $2.97 at the market time for this time of video. And at the beginning, as usual, this refers to this card being you at the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card. If you are the Monarch, instead, each opponent loses 6 life and they discard 2 cards. So that's really cool. For 4 mana, you can really start hurting that opponent of yours or multiples. And the card is kind of cool because it says watch your step, and if you look at the picture, you truly should. So again, most of these cards right now at the top 5 are basically if you are the Monarch. So let's move on to number 2. And at number 2, we have Court of Cunning from Commander Legends. As per with the other cards, it is a rare going for $2.85. What also makes this very unique and powerful is, well, it only costs 3 mana when you previously saw 4 or 5. Basically, you got to be the Monarch when this works, but at the beginning of your upkeep, any number of target players each mill 2 cards. If you are the Monarch, each of those players mill 10 cards. So you can't really beat that for 3 mana. Just bring that out, it destroys the enemy deck, and this is why it's at number 2, because, well, there's pretty much not more to self-explain for this. So let's move on to number 1. And at number 1, out of every court card in the Magic, is Court of Grace from Commander Legends, and it's rare going for $4.38 on the market. This amazing court card can actually be quite helpful in the Magic world if you do choose to use it properly with the whole Monarch thing. So you have to enter the battlefield, you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 spirit creature token with flying. If you are the Monarch, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying instead. So this type of format, this card would be 100% deadly no matter what you do, because you can block, attack if you choose to do that. And that is all the Magic cards in the world I think that are a top 10 court. And I hope you guys have a good day and a good evening. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Snow, and today we'll be talking about Magic the Gathering top 10 crystals. That should be fun. So now, at number 10. So starting off with our list is Crystal Rod from various sets, being uncommon, going with an average price of 15 cents on the market. This one's very basic and very simple. This is why it's at number 10. Cost 1. Bring it out into play and pay 1. Any blue spell cast by any player gives you 1 life. So in the long run, I don't feel like this is very powerful, because who cares about 1 life when you can spend 1 mana on anything else? So this is why it's at number 10. So let's move on to number 9. Which we got next is Savvy Crystal from Icaro, Lair of Behemoths. It's an uncommon, just going for whopping 13 cents. Well, this is just basically the counterpart of dual lands. It costs 3 mana for this artifact, therefore adding the 3 mana to your choice with the cycling, which is pretty typical for a land. So if you're stuck with no lands, this would be the choice, but most people play dual lands, and this is why it's at number 9. Now, at number 8, we have the infamous Stone Speaker Crystal from Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. It's uncommon for 14 cents on the market at this time of video, and that's maybe because it's brand new and we're not figuring what the prices are. So it costs 4 mana. It says tap to add 2 colors to your mana pool, or sacrifice exile number of target players' graveyards, draw a card. So it does have that cool ability of exiling target players' graveyards if you really want to, because you don't know what you're going against. This is why it's at number 8, because it does give that unique ability to semi-control the board. Well, let's move on to number 7. Now we have Crystal Spray from Evasion. It's a rare, just going for 51 cents. Even after all this time, it's worth nothing. But I think it's cool because you have the ability to draw a card. Let's change the text of a target spell or permanent by replacing all instances of one color, word, or basic land type with another until end of turn. Not very effective for 3 mana. Drawing a card, like that's why I really like it. I don't care about the other stuff. For 3 mana, that's just not good because you can play even Consider for cheaper. So let's move on to number 6. We got Crystal Shard from various sets, being an uncommon with an average price of 114. This one costs 3 to put into play, but then costs another 3 to activate this ability, or 1 island. Return target creature to its owner's hand unless its controller pays 1. So it gives that universal ability to pay 3 or 1, so obviously you would use this in island, and this is more of an annoying card than being a good card. Let's move halfway down our list to number 5, which is one of my personal uncommon favorites from the Urza Sega series, but it is from various sets. Crystal Chimes is an uncommon going for an average price of just under $2. Costs 3 mana, again. For 3, sacrifice it, return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to your hand. So it's like Replenish, but the cheaper version. So let's move on to number 4. We have Memory Crystal from Exodus. It's a rare going for just under $3. And it's really good if you can pull it off. It costs 3 mana. All buybacks costs are reduced by 2. But with buyback costs, you're going back to old school Magic where this card is kind of useless nowadays. Maybe they'll bring it back, who knows? But right now, this is why it's kind of at number 4, is because you can still do a vintage deck and have fun, but it's kind of useless. So let's move on to number 3. We have Crystal Ball from various sets. It's an uncommon going just for 40 cents at the market at the time of this video. And this picture is really cool. It kind of reminds me of Curse Artifact from the Dark. And again, I don't know what it is with the crystal. It costs 3 mana to play. I guess it's some ongoing theme that being got in the Magic world. Basically, it's very simple. It costs 1, tap, scry 2. Scrying can be very helpful in a deck, especially if you're facing an opponent of any type of deck. So let's move on to number 2. We have Crystal Vein from various sets, uncommon with an average price of $2.27. So it's pretty good for an uncommon. It's very simple and very basic like the other ones. Add 1 colors to your mana pool. Can't argue with that. Or sacrifice it, add 2 colors to your mana pool. So if you're making an artifact deck, you can just definitely pump it out right away. First turn, 2 mana. Boom. Especially if you have Memnites, that can even be more helpful. So let's move on to number 1. And at number 1, as I just said, we got Crystal Quarry from Odyssey. It's a rare going for over $10 on the market at the time of this video. And I don't remember anything being good from Odyssey, so this must be one of the top cards that are actually worth something from that set. It's add 1 colors to your mana pool. Pretty impressive. And then you pay 5 to add every color to your mana pool. So this is very effective if you're doing a multicolored deck, especially when you have have every permanent of every color in your deck and you win the game. I forget the name of that card, but this card would be perfect for it. So there is the top 10 of the crystal cards, and I hope you guys have a good day and a good evening. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Ruin. So today we'll be doing Magic the Gathering top 10 haunting cards. And now, at number 10. We're going to start our list off with Haunting Apparition from Mirage. It's an uncommon, just going for 16 cents on the market. Costs 3 mana for this 1/2, basically. It's a flyer, so that's help. It has the power equal to 1 plus the number of green creature cards in target opponent's graveyard. I don't see how this card is effective. I don't even know why it's an uncommon, but this is the way it is. So you just hope that your opponent has green. This is why it's at number 10. So let's move on to number 9. We have one of the most expensive hunting cards, which is Haunting Wind from Antiquities, and it being an uncommon with an average price of $61 on the market. Well, it says each time an artifact is in play, it is tapped or its activation cost is paid, it will do 1 damage to that artifact's controller. It is not triggered by continuous artifacts. For 4 mana to do 1 damage every turn, this is not a very effective card, and the reason why it's expensive is basically it's old school. There's no reason for this card to be here. It is at number 9 because it does have more of a chance of someone having an artifact than green cards. So let's move on to number 8. So now what we got is Midnight Haunting from Innistrad or Commander 2014. It's an uncommon going for an average price of 22 cents. This instant, only costs 3 mana. It says put 2 1/1 white spirit tokens into play with flying onto the battlefield. Well, you can definitely make a spirit deck with this, and I do like this ability of instant because you can cast on an opponent's turn and surprise him, and then do something else with that. So let's move on to number 7. At number 7, we got, Haunting Him. It's from Time Spiral or Iconic Masters. It's an uncommon going for 6 cents. And as you guys know, I absolutely love Him to Turok, so this is just another one up the board. But it does cost 6 mana for this instance. This target player discards 2 cards. If you play the spell during your main phase, that player discards 4 cards instead. Well, I think that's completely awesome. But typically, 4 cards would be what the opponent has, so this would be very, very effective. So let's move on to number 6. We have Haunting Imitation from Crimson Vow Commander. It's a rare going for 12 cents on the market. Well, it says each player reveals the top card of their library. For each creature the card revealed this way, create a token that's a copy of it, and it's a 1/1. It's a spirit, in addition to its other types, and it has flying. And then you can return it to your hand if no creatures. So that's a very effective spell, but it does require some manipulation to your deck or opponents, but most likely yours, to take effect of this card, which is also a sorcery. So let's move on to number 5. And halfway down our list is Chill Haunting from Scourge. It's an uncommon going for just 10 cents on the market. Cost 2 mana for as additional cost to play it. Remove X creature cards in your graveyard from the game. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. So it's not the most effective card, but it is, I like, as a backup because quite often if your creatures are in your graveyard, you're not going to do much with them. So you might as well use them to give an opponent's creature -X till end of turn. So let's move on to number 4. And we got Haunting Echoes from various sets. It's a rare going for an average price of 37 cents on the market. And this is kind of like a more expensive version to deck Death and an opponent. Cost 5 mana for this sorcery. Says exile all cards from target player's graveyard other than basic land cards. For each card exiled this way, search that player's library for all cards with the same name as that card, and exile. That player shuffles his or her library. Then, on top of that, if you don't exile cards, at least you get to see what the opponent's deck looks like. So for 5 mana, I don't know if that's very effective. But let's move on to number 3. Then we got Haunting Misery from Weatherlight. It's a common one for 17 cents on the market. It says, remove X creature cards in your graveyard from the game. It deals X damage to target player. I find that very, very more effective. Chances of an opponent having hexproof is very little, so I think this card is very underrated, making it a common. I think it should at least be an uncommon. But let's move on to number 2. Well, we got one from one of the recent sets. It's Haunting Voyage. It's from Kaldheim. It's a mythic. Well, that's right, $4. Costs 6 mana, which is very expensive, but it says choose a creature type. Return up to 2 creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield. If the spell was foretold, return all creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield instead. Well, for 5, plus the 2 swamp, you're not going to argue with that, especially if your graveyard is full. So mill yourself to put some kind of combo, and you can bring them out right away, or their opponent destroys them all, and use this card. But let's move on to number 1. And at number 1, we have Hallowed Haunting from Innistrad Crimson Vow. It's a mythic going for just over $8, and we'll see this once it's kicked out of standard. Maybe it'll do something. But for now, it says as long as you control 7 or more enchantments, creatures you control have flying and vigilance. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a white spirit creature token with this creature power, its toughness are equal to the number of spirits you control. So you make an enchantment deck, and if this card doesn't get destroyed, you basically win the game. So that is all the top 10 haunting cards. So I hope you guys have a good day and a good evening. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is RuneSnow. Today we'll be going over Magic the Gathering Top 10 Herald. And now, at number 10. We have Herald of Sarah from Urza Saga. It's a rare going for a whopping almost $9, and that is only because it is on the reserve list. This amazing card, which I personally love, it costs 4 mana for a 3/4 flying, but it does have Echo, so that means you have to pay it for the next turn or it dies. attacking does not cause it to tap. Back in the day, this was very impressive. Obviously, nowadays, this is a complete garbage card. But still, I like it. So let's move on to number 9. We have Herald of Leshrac. From being Cold Snap or Mystery Booster, it's a rare going just for $1.75 at the current time of this video. It costs 7 mana for this 2 flyer, but it does have a cumulative upkeep, gain control of a land you don't control. So that's very impressive because it's not something you would very typically see in the Magic world. And it gets +1/+1 for each land you control, but don't own. When it leaves play, each player gains control of each land he or she owns that you control. So otherwise, this is just a very unique and interesting card. I would actually personally, I think I might make a deck out of it. But the reason why it's at number 9 is it's just not worth it. So let's move on to number 8. Next we have is Donald, Herald of Wings. Commander Vow of Commander, being mythic with an average price of 44 cents. And just to let you know, I just did Heralds. I did not do anything like Herald's Horn or anything. I just wanted to do creatures. That being said, this is a 4 for a 3/3. It says whenever you cast a non-legendary creature spell with flying, you may copy it, except that its copying is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types. Do this only one turn. So it's the reason why it's here as well, because for 4 for a 3/3 and what it does, I don't think it's that very impressive. And these spirits, they don't even have flying. So let's just move on to number 7, which is Yiva, Nature's Herald from Magic 2013, or Dual Decks, Elves versus Inventors. It's a rare going for an average price of $1.51 on the market. This one costs 4/4/4/4 with Flash. You may cast green creature cards as though they had Flash. And as you guys know, I'm a fan of that Flash. So this card being green, it's not even blue. This is just incredible. I don't know what else to say. So let's move on to number 6. We have Herald of the Secret Streams from Ixalan. It's a rare with an average price of just over $4. Costs 4 mana for this 2/3, and it says creatures you control get +1/+1 counters on them that cannot be blocked. Honestly, I think the counter thing is you really have to build a deck all around that. And on top of that, it costs 4 mana. So this is why it's at number 6, is because I'm not really impressed with it. Some people might be, but it's a Merfolk Warrior. So if you're making a Merfolk deck, this is also not useless. But when it comes to Heralds, I think this is pretty good. So let's move halfway down our list to number 5. We have Herald of the Host from Commander Mythology Volume 2 or Commander 2015. And though it's an uncommon, I feel like this is more of a rare than anything else. It costs only $2.76 at the time of this video. It costs 5 mana for a 4/4 Flying Vigilance. But the reason on top of that, it does have Mirrored, so that's why it's here halfway down our list. And this card is actually quite playable. So let's move on to number 4, which we have is Herald of Anguish. It's from Aether Revolt. It's kind of funny. I don't think I've ever said Aether Revolt in a top 10 video. But nonetheless, it is a mythic with an average price of $2.66 on the time of this video. This 7 mana casting cost gives you a 5/5 flyer, but at the beginning of your end step, each opponent discards a card. Well, that's really cool with the creature. And it does have Improvise, and then sacrifice an artifact. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. And, well, it doesn't have tapping, so it just keeps going on and on if you want. So let's move on to number 3. We have Herald of War from Midnight Hunt Commander or Avakian Restored. It's a rare with just under $2. This one costs 5 mana for a 3/3 with seems like any type of Herald Angel. Whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So that's very cool. And angel spells and human spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each +1/+1 counter on it. Well, there's a deck in itself just based on that alone. And that's a really cool ability. This is why it's at number 3, because it has all these things. Once it's in play, it can do so much. So let's move on to number 2. We have Herald of the Pantheon from Magic Ornaments or Commander 2018, with it being rare with an average price of $3.22 on the market. So this one's very cool. It's at number 2 is because of its low casting cost, which is 2 for a 2/2. And then it says enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life. So this is very impressive. You can really play around with this deck because there's so many cards that get pumped when you gain life, especially with the green-white combination. This card is very playable in the real world. So let's move on to number 1. And while at number 1, you may not agree with this choice from Gay's Herald, it's from various sets, rare with an average price of $2.35. Costs 2 mana for this 1/1. It is an elf, and it's not legendary. So I did factor that in for being number 1. And I am opposed of countering. I hate that so much. So with this card being at number 1 is because of that. It says creature spells can't be countered by spells or abilities. So to me, this is number 1. Over burn minus killing creatures. If stopping counters just destroys blue. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the top 10, and I hope you guys have a good day and a good evening. Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Crytsal. Today we'll be doing Magic the Gathering top 10 ice cards in all the Magic world. So now, at number 10. And the first one on our list is Icefall Regent from Dragons of Tarkir or Arch Enemy Nicole Bolas. It's a rare with an average price of 45 cents at the time of this video. And when it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap turns. Its controller untaps it as long as you control Icefall. So for 5 mana, 4/3 flyer dragon, that's really cool. And on top of that, it says spells your opponents cast that target Icefall cost 2 more to cast. So that's an addition, and this is only at number 10. So let's move on to number 9. At number 9, we have Icequake. It's from Ice Age, uncommon with an average price of 44 cents. I like this one because, well, it says destroy target land. And you don't typically see that with black anymore, so if that land is snow-covered land, it deals 1 damage to the target land's controller. Again, this was Ice Age, so there were snow-covered lands, which makes sense at the time. This is why it's at number 9, because it basically destroys target land, and it's a cool card from the black perspective. So let's move on to number 8. At number 8, we have Ice Cave from Apocalypse or The List. It's a rare going just for 52 cents on the market, and I personally love this card from Apocalypse. It says whenever a player plays a spell, any other player may play that spell's mana cost. If that player does, counter that spell. So it does have a bit of control. It does cost 5 mana to put into play, and I just like the picture and the saying, basically in general, and this is why it's at number 8. So let's move on to number 7. We have Ice Cauldron from Ice Age. It's a rare with an average price of $3.33, and it is actually on the reserve list as most, or I guess, common cards from this era. Basically, it says put a charge counter on it and put a spell card face up on the cauldron. Note the type and the amount of mana used to pay this activation cost. Use this ability only if there are no charge counters on the Ice Cauldron. So already this is starting to get a little complicated. You may play that spell card as though it was in your hand. Remove the charge counters. Costs 4 mana, so it has that versatility, but that's why it's at number 7. So let's move on to number 6. Which we have is On Thin Ice from Modern Horizons. It's a rare, just with an average price of $1.26. And this one is really cool because it only costs 1 mana, and it is a snow enchantment, if it matters to you. On top of that, it says enchant snow land you control. When it enters the battle, exile target creature an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. So this is very cool, as most cards like this would cost 3 or 4. This only costs 1. Like you just need snow lands. It's an easy peasy. So let's move halfway down our list to number 5. We got Thing in the Ice. Well, this one is from Shadows over Innistrad. It's a rare, going for $10. And I'm debating whether to put this at 5, but you know it just is, because it does cost 2 mana for the 0/4 with Defender, with only 4 ice counters on it. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery card, which is very easy, remove an ice counter and then transform it, which would turn into a 7/8 Awoken Horror. Transforms, return all non-horror creatures to their owner's hand. So I feel like this maybe should have been at 3, but I honestly think at 5, there's many more things you can do between then and there, unless you are building an instant sorcery deck. So let's move on to number 4. Where we got is Tendo Icebridge from Betrayers of Kamigawa or The List. It's a rare going just for $2.78 on the market with the average price. Comes into play with a charge counter, so it doesn't come into play tapped, so that's very impressive. You add 1 to your mana pool for colorless, or remove a charge counter for 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This is definitely a must-have, especially if you're playing a multicolor deck, because removing it and it doesn't come into play tapped is something that you can use right away, and this is why it's at number 4. Better than the Thin Ice card. So let's move on to number 3. Ice Fang Kotal is from Modern Horizons, or believe it or not, it's on the list as well. It's a rare going just for under $5. It does have flash, so as you guys know, I'm a very big fan of that. For a force and to get that 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. That's really cool with a flyer, only second turn. And it has Death Touch as long as you control at least 3 other snow permanents. And that is very easy because it does cost 2 mana, so by that time you can play your 3rd snow cover permanent. And boom, it has Death Touch. You draw a card, flash. You can't beat that with a forest and an island creature. So let's move on to number 2, which is Ice Storm from various early sets, kind of like, Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, all that stuff. So it's uncommon, just going for under $100. I personally love this card. This is one of my favorite cards in all of Magic, so I am putting it at number 2 because it does say destroy any 1 land in play. And this is a green card, so this is a very impressive card. I personally like it, again, because it's not even the red, which costs typically 4 mana to destroy some land. And even got Sinkhole. I just feel like this is different. I really like this card. And this is why it's at number 2. It's simple, it's easy, and it's done by that great artist, Dan Fraser. But let's move on to number 1. And you must know by this card by now from Magic if you play it. Sword of Fire and Ice. It's from various sets. Started off as rare and then turned into mythic with an average price of $56.74 on the market. It does cost 3 colors for this card. Equipped creature gets +2/+2. Has protection from red and blue, so that's really cool, especially with bounce and burn. And when it deals combat damage to player, it deals 2 damage to any target and you draw a card. And it has equip too. Not much more to say about this card. This is like an ultimate gold card. All the swords like this are. This is why it does have ice in it. So I say this is the best ice card in all the Magic world. It's playable. It's doable. Everything about it is great. So I hope you guys have a good day and a good evening. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rue. So today we're doing top 10 Leyline. That's right, the top 10 Leyline, which I actually love these cards. So let's begin with number 10. Which at number 10, we got Leyline Prowler from War of the Spark, which is an uncommon going for roughly 18 cents on the market. This is the only Leyline card that is a creature on this list, and it's at number 10. The reason why it's at number 10 is because it has Death Touch, Lifelink, and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool for 3 mana for this 2/3. That's 100% awesome. Death Touch and Lifelink, either way, you can get rid of them, gain life, or just simply gain mana, as I just said. So this is 100% a really amazing card. Out of all the Leylines, it's at number 10 though. So let's move on to number 9. So at number 9, we got Leyline of Life Force from Guild Pack. It's a rare going for roughly $3.53 on the market. So as most Leylines, it says if it's in your opening hand, you may begin with it in play. So that's basically the whole basis of the Leyline Force and other Leylines in the entire top 10. So it's for 2 colors and 2 forests if you can't. So it says creature spells can't be countered. The reason why it's at number 9, well, it's very specific against blue decks, so that's why I find it should be at number 9. But if you're playing against blue deck, well, this is awesome. They can't just counter anything. So let's move on to number 8. At number 8, we got Leyline of Singularity from Guild Pack, a rare, which is going for roughly $1.52 on the market. Again, I'm not going to repeat this. We'll do it just for this card. You can begin the game with it in play if it's in your opening hand. So it says all non-land permanents are legendary. Well, there's many cards that can help with this combination card. This is why it's at number 8, because in general it's not very good. When it comes to Leylines, it's not very good, but because of the combination that could possibly happen with this card, can make this very efficient card. And that's why here it is at number 8. So let's move on to number 7. Which we have Leyline of Abundance, which is from Core 2020, and it's a rare, roughly going for $2.63. The reason why Core 20 cards for the series is going up because not a lot of people bought them, so this is why they're high value. basically it says whenever you tap a creature for a mana, add an additional 1. So for 6 colors and 2 forests, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So if you get that out right away, that can actually be very, very powerful. You can start pumping out mana as fast as you can. This is very efficient enchantment, so that's basically it. Pumping out creatures, so it's unlike it's not targeted, it's helping you. So let's move on to number 6. At number 6, which is Leyline of Punishment. So it's from Magic 2011. A rare going for roughly $2.93. I like this card because, well, it's kind of more of an annoyance than anything else. So it says players can't gain life and damage can't be prevented. So it kind of works around several colors. So this is why it's at number 6, because it kind of works around that, and damage can't be prevented. So this card is already red. So if you're doing a burn deck, you know it's not going to be prevented. That's why it's here 100%. So let's move on to number 5. At number 5, we got Leyline of the Void from various sets. It's a rare, going for roughly $8.56 on the market. So basically, you lay out their Leyline. If you're opening your hand, you may begin with it on the battlefield. It says if a card be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it. Well, that will destroy any graveyard retrieval if you really need that. So this card is 100% annoying, and it is very good in various sets and throughout the whole Magic world. You put this into any deck, it can be quite annoying as there are many cards playing with the graveyards. So this is why it's worth this much. Let's move on to number 4. So what we're going to start with is at number 4, we got the Leyline of Combustion, which is from various sets. It's a rare going for roughly 29 cents. I feel like it should be worth a lot more because I am a fan of its ability. So basically, again, I'm going to say it with every card, this Leyline can be put into play if it's in your hand at the beginning of the game. But it also says whenever you and or at least one permanent you control becomes a target with a spell or ability an opponent controls, it does 2 damage to that player. I think this is absolutely amazing. It shuts down blue and red decks completely because they'll take 2 damage every time if they can't get rid of that combustion. And if it's out first turn, which I have actually played where I randomly got 3 in a row. That's 6 damage first turn. Absolutely amazing. I love this card. So let's move on to number 3. At number 3, we got Leyline of the Meek from Guild Pack, a rare going for $2.32. For a Leyline, that's actually quite a bit of money. The reason why here it is at number 3 is, well, basically, so if it's in your opening hand, you can put it into play. For creature tokens, you get +1/+1. So with so many token decks you can possibly build, most common one right now in the standard is pests or whatever. You can do anything like elves, squirrels, or whatever. So with creature tokens, that would be very helpful, and there's so much you can do with that. I love the creature token ability, and this is why it's at number 3. So let's move on to number 2. At number 2, we got Leyline of Anticipation from various sets, which is a rare. Going for it. That's right, $6.83 at the market at this time in the video. Picture is very cool. Blue is actually generally pretty good, but it says you may cast spells as though they had flash. Wow, so that just means you can play anything anytime. That just throws the enemy off whatever. Like I said, this is at number 2. 100%. I like the flash ability because you can play anything and just, like I said it before and I'll say it again, just screws with the enemy. And if they attack, they may not want to attack. Maybe they don't want to burn. So this is basically a really good card unless the other person has instances as well. So let's move on actually to number 1. Now, number 1 is actually 100% personal choice. Is Leyline of Sanctuary. It's from various sets. It's a rare going for $3.74. So this one is at number 1 because I personally love this card. It is absolutely the best. I 100% know that not a lot of people will agree with me. The blue one is just better, but this one for me is a personal. This basically says you have hexproof. So you can't be the target of spells or abilities yours opponents control. Again, like I said, I normally don't do my personal opinion. Well, I am doing my personal opinions right now. But what cards I prefer over other cards, and I'm doing a logical way. This one is not logical. This is 100%. I think this is number 1. It is not the best of the Leylines. but to me it is. This is why it's at number 1. I love this ability of you having hexproof. And that is actually all the cards on the list, and I hope you enjoyed it. So I hope you guys have a good day and a good evening. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Runes. So today we'll be doing Magic the Gathering top 10 lost cards. So now, at number 10, we're going to be starting off with Scholar of the Lost Trove. It's from Jumpstart. It's a rare with an average price of 22 cents on the market. This one costs 7 mana for this 5/5 flyer. But when it enters the battlefield, you may cast a target instant, sorcery, or item card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. Well, if we put you in your graveyard this turn, exile it. So that's really kind of cool. But this is a very expensive card. 7 mana. That's the reason why it's at number 10. It's just not very powerful, though I do love that Sphinx picture. Now, at number 9, it is Journey to the Lost City from Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. It's a rare with an average price, yes, a whopping 13 cents on the market. So it says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top 4 cards of your library, then roll a d20. It does cost 4 mana. I do like the artwork for this one as well. I don't think it's very effective even in a commander deck, milling 4 cards just for those targeted abilities. This is why it's at number 9. It's just not that very impressive. So let's move on to number 8. We have Lost Leyline. It's from New Phyrexian. It's a common and going for an average price of 18 cents on the market, which is very impressive for a common. There's not much more to say about this. It has Infect. That's why it's very impressive. Though it is at number 8, I think Infect is a really cool ability, which doesn't really exist nowadays, or at the time of this video. And it's a 2/1. So yeah, you play cat and mouse, I guess, with this ability with the power and defense, and you can figure it out. So let's move on to number 7. We have Lost Order of Jarkald. It's an Ice Age. It's a rare, believe it or not, for 34 cents. Costs 4 mana, which is very expensive considering nowadays. When it enters the battlefield, it has the power and toughness of each equal to 1 plus the number of target creatures opponent controls. So this can really backfire if you don't want those creatures to die. So maybe you can like give them Pathicism, or just somehow give this creature unblockable and gain life so your opponent can still have creatures. Other than that, it's not that great. For 4 mana, it's just there's so much you can do in the Magic world. So let's move on to number 6. We have Lost Legacy from Kaladesh. It's a rare, going for, well, just 18 cents on the market at the time of this video. And I actually am very impressed with the color of this card for black mana because it says name a non-artifact, non-land card, search the target's player graveyard, hand, and library for any number of those cards with the same name, and exile. That player shuffles his or her library, then draws a card for each card exiled this way. 3 mana. Typically, this is kind of like a blue card. That's why I think it's very impressive. Overall, in Magic, it's not, but when it comes to lost cards, this is actually pretty good. But let's move on to halfway down our list to number 5. Well, we got Sphinx of the Lost Truths from Zendikar. It's a rare, and that's right, 24 cents at the time of this video. And as you know, most of these lost cards are not expensive at all. It's might be just like an uncommon price. And it already costs 5 mana for this 3/5 flyer. And when it has a kicker, it says, when it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. Then, if it wasn't kicked, discard 3 cards. So, you're paying for what? 7 mana for a 3/5 flyer to draw cards? Maybe that's impressive, but I just don't think it is. So let's move on to number 4. Well, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. The Lost Item. I don't know. I'm sorry. It's from various sets. It's a rare, going for an average price of 39 cents market. So it's going up. Costs 2 for this 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. If it enters from your library or was cast from your library, draw 2 cards instead. And when it becomes a target of a spell or shuffle into its owner's library, so that you can keep it alive over and over again. It is a legendary creature, which is very helpful, that you only have 1 in play for the opponent. But it is a very useful card, I believe. Let's move on to number 3. Next on the list is Sovereigns of the Lost Alara from Ultimate Masters or Alara Reborn. It's a rare. That's right, $1.90. We're getting to those expensive. It does have Exalted, so that's very cool for this 6/4/5. Surprisingly, it does not have flying, even though the picture is clouds, basically. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, you may search your library for an aura card that can enchant that creature, put it into play attached to that creature, then shuffle your library. And this isn't a legendary creature, so you can somehow get maybe 4 of these in play and have those aura cards in your deck. This is pretty much game over. So it's a really cool card, though it is expensive. So let's move on to number 2. It's Well of Lost Dreams. From various sets, it's a rare, going for a whopping $2.55 on the market at the time of this video. And I actually use this card in real decks, so this card is very impressive. It does cost 4 mana. Whenever you gain life, you may pay X, where X is less or equal to the amount of life you gain. If you do, draw X cards. So that's pretty impressive. It costs 4 mana only to bring out this very powerful card. Once you get this play and you're able to pay it, just keep drawing cards. This is just a really cool card. Really cool picture by Jeff. So some say knowledge lost during the ritual of revoking is returned through the waters. So let's move on to number 1. And that's right, we got Azusa, the Lost But Seeking from Fairy Sets. It's a rare, going for almost $10 on the market. Very cool card, and it's very self-explanatory. 3 mana for this one too. It says you may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. Well, there's not much more to say that. There's so many land decks you can build with this around, or even do a multicolor deck or anything. This is just such a powerful card. Good thing it's legendary, because I can't imagine having more than one in play. So I hope you guys enjoy the top 10 video, and I hope you guys have a good day and a good evening.